morning, everyone. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. I'm wishing everyone an awesome afternoon, an exciting evening, and a magnificent morning wherever you are in the world. We have people from California today and India and Washington, D.C. on the call today to talk about flexibility versus rigidity in our mindsets. And I want to get started with them. So I want to tell you that we have Michelle Peticolas. She goes by Dr. Michelle. However, could you please change it to your Facebook name, Michelle? So if people want to click on you and find you, they can easily do that. Same with you, Bob. You should be using your Facebook name, please. And as far as I think about rigidity and flexibility, they are two components that work together. Sometimes you need to be a little rigid in what you think you want to do, but also flexible in order to go in the direction you need to go. So having said that, Michelle, you said you had some definite thoughts about it. Would you like to begin expressing your thoughts?
Sure. Flexibility is needed in an environment that is rapidly changing. Otherwise, you perish. You have to be agile to be able to adapt to rapid change. But there is also a mechanism in this body and in the bodies of lots of animals that pushes for rigidity, because when you do things the same way, you're more likely to survive if things are staying the same way that they always did before. So you depend on those experiences and what you've learned to keep you alive. And what I found is that it's the lower brainstem, well, I haven't found many neuroscientists have found this, that tend to be where we find that rigidity, because when fear is triggered, you want to go to things that you know are safe. And flexibility is something that arises out of your feeling safe and feeling confident and feeling like, oh, I can handle this. As human beings, we tend to go into a rigid place, whoever we are, when we're in a place of fear. And the flexibility comes when we are feeling capable. And so that's the main point I wanted to make, was that a lot of it has to do with our emotional state. And then you find certain people that tend to be more rigid mindset, but chances are they have gone through a rough time in their lives that has created that rigidity where they want to stay safe. I call those people controllers because they need to control their environment to feel safe.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Michelle said. And we have gone through trying times. The pandemic really showcased those people who have what is known in cognitive psychology as cognitive rigidity versus cognitive flexibility. So people want, for the most part, people want certainty, and we see people with that rigid mindset that tend to move towards black and white thinking, and they're very difficult to see the shades of gray and everything like that. So people want certainty versus uncertainty. In fact, and as Michelle talked about, that human beings look for that in terms of the safety aspect. It's very hard to deal with uncertainty. And we see people who are entrepreneurs and artists and others that, in essence, live off of uncertainty because they're going out and they're exploring, they're challenging their beliefs and everything. I had to learn that myself. And one of the things, being back in the Marines, especially in Force Recon, is that we had to adapt to uncertainty all the time. Even what we planned for didn't always work. And that's a thing. What we planned for, you go back to pre-pandemic days, we didn't plan for what was going to be happening, but things happen. So we had to adapt, and a lot of people just could not adapt to it.
Well, and it takes its toll on people too, because if you're not used to it, if you are not experienced in rapid change, and then you experience change, it not only is your mind rigid, but your body responds or experiences that. And I've seen a few people that I haven't seen in 2 years since the starting of COVID. And I'm shocked at how drawn and depleted they look. And some of that is the body's response to a condition that really isn't ideal for human beings.
Why do you say that? Give us an example of people who are having issues with that.
We as human beings are social creatures. We are designed to succeed, to be successful in our lives through connection with other people. And that includes tactile, touch, hugging, feeling the energy of another person around us. And when we're denied that, it is very difficult for the body, for the human organism to deal with that. They say that in prisons, the worst punishment is solitary confinement. People who stay in solitary confinement for a long time actually start to hallucinate, to lose connection with reality. It is so traumatizing. So if you are single and you're staying at home and all your contact is through Zoom, or even not Zoom at all, or you see people on the street, today still, I walk across the other side of the street when I see a person because that's become the habit. And I don't like that because I wouldn't have done that 2 years ago. But that's the habit now. We see people and we give a great deal of space. And that may be very different for different cultures, how much we feel comfortable having closer contact with people. So that's one of the things it does. It takes away that socializing, that nurturing that we need from other human beings, both physically and energetically.
Shivali, because Michelle mentioned culture. How's it in India on that?
India, in what sense? Like, in what sense you're talking? Are you looking for something specific?
Yeah, in terms of, yeah, like we've gone through this pandemic, and now we're talking about like how people respond, people that have the rigid mindset and a flexible mindset.
See, Bob, I can talk about myself. I would be the best example. I've been a working professional for many years now. So when this pandemic came and the lockdown was declared, as we called in India, firstly, it was shocking that such things can happen. Though we have read about such things in history, we know about it. But as Michelle said, that our mind is programmed in certain ways. So it was first thing, like it's a new experience for me, right? So my reaction was, oh, is it? It's going to be like this. How is it possible? And I still remember the day I was walking back to my home and I found all the children missing in the park, in the playing area. And that sense of silence was so eerie. It was actually eerie for me. I couldn't imagine that all the kids have suddenly vanished from the playground. So that is the first shock I received. So as you know, that's the survival thing. I'm used to seeing certain things. I'm used to certain experience. And then, of course, our work also changed. We started working from home. We got busy. But at the same time, there was a sense of panic within me. What holds in the future? How is it going to be in the future? Can I visit my mother? Small things were mattering to me, though I was keeping myself busy. And today, after everything is over in a way. I now feel that that year was one of my best years. But that time I didn't feel it. Now I feel it. So the question is, why do you feel it now? Because now when I look at it in retrospective, I began to do those things which I always wanted to do. I could give time to myself. I had time for doing my healings. I'm a holistic healer. I could go even attend podcasts, these webinars. I could connect to people all over the world, and that really changed me in a much, I would say, it was unimaginable. That entire change comes in one year. That transformation I felt within me. But that time I was not realizing it. I realize it today. I'm a much richer person. Of course, my heart goes out to people who lost their near ones. I also lost a few of them. But the point is that at that time, I did panic. My response was, oh my God, what's happening? The silence I was not liking. But today, I feel that as a person, I have changed a lot. So this is the answer. Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have gone through similar changes. I know, like with myself, I really learned to adapt fast because I had to do it from my childhood and also my time in the Marine Corps and so forth and just going through my life. Yeah, so going through this pandemic, I think it was less challenging for somebody like me than most people because I'm very, very, very flexible. I adapt, so it didn't bother me as much. As far as like what Dr. Michelle was talking about in terms of touching and everything like that, yeah, that was a part that I was missing, and being able to do in-person workshops, teachings, and things like that. That what was a challenge. Yet I was able to bring even like what we're on Zoom. So being able to do this, and now I'm going to do hybrid trainings, combining Zoom with in person. So that was part of the growth that I felt on my personal basis, and it's going to be exciting for me. No matter what challenges come up, now I have a new process that I can bring forth and be able to reach more people than just one workshop at a time. So, Dr. Michelle, your thoughts?
Well, one of my thoughts is that in some ways, life didn't change that much. I was already working from home. I was already on Zoom, and my husband works from home too. So we were already home. The only thing that was different was I stopped driving so much. I used to put a lot of miles on my car, driving all over the Bay Area. And last year, I think I had 180 miles on my car. I mean, that's pretty amazing. In fact, at one point, we were worried about the batteries dying on our vehicles because we were driving so infrequently. And one of the things that we did start doing was riding bikes. So we go to one of our markets. It's, I don't know, maybe a mile and a half or something up some pretty good hills. And we do that regularly. It's actually easier than trying to find parking at that particular market. But also, it's just a really fun thing to do, which we never did before. So in that way, more flexible in finding new things that are the gifts of a changed situation, like you were talking about.
I think you just mentioned, especially the bike riding, and you had depth, and that created flexibility. But just the aspect of moving your body more versus driving more is very, very good for the brain and increases the plasticity within the brain itself, which increases flexibility as well. So that's excellent. And I do that. I walk a lot more and so forth, and being able to adapt. Like I'm glad I don't go to a gym anymore. I work out at home and just move my body in terms of that way, and it's helped and so forth. plus I had to unlearn a lot of stuff that I used to know and used to believe in order to bring in new information. So all of it's working together.
So I was already walking twice a day to begin with. So I think that helped my adaptability. What I found is I cannot do yoga on Zoom.
But there are people teaching yoga on Zoom, which I
No.
find amazing. They're
We had, yeah. We had ladies over here who started home workshops, through Zoom. Like Bob asked, the culture. Over here, people love to do all these things. So they began to do it professionally from home on Zoom. The children, for example, the small kids were learning dance on Zoom because the children found it very tough, especially the nursery kids, to be locked up in the homes with their family members and they're attending school from home. I think hats off to them. They have been very brave. For us still as adults, we can adapt ourselves. Now for small children to be told that you're not going to be at home for months. We had complete lockdown for almost 3 to 4 months. Nobody could move out of their homes, And for kids to be at home, you can well imagine small children. So their mothers, they started doing such stuff that organize dance programs or dance workshops for them, keep them busy. So yes.
And you wonder what happens to children that were maybe don't know anything other than the lockdown because they were born during the lockdown, and how does that influence their ability to socialize with other children as they grow older? What will be the impact of this?
Yep, and that's especially true to the youngest children, because our brains and those younger children are being molded at that time.
That's right.
And we know that through a lot of research going back decades, that if you have a child that doesn't have connections, and particularly like if they're not giving any hugs or anything at all, their neurons are not developed at all, versus somebody who has a lot of connections, a lot of touch and everything, what Dr. Michelle mentioned earlier, that their brain cells are just flourishing and a lot of connections throughout the brain. And it's going to be an interesting, I think this is probably the largest experimentation, in a sense, or study we're going to be able to draw. What are these children going to be like as they're moving forward? And researchers in the future are going to be able to take a look at these children. So
but it isn't like we don't have some examples in the past. Certainly when we were going through World War II and what was going on in England, where the children were literally taken away from their parents and sent off into the countryside and separated and sometimes forever, because their parents would die from some sort of bomb or something, and how that affects the experience. And living in a home that isn't your own home and not getting the love or maybe getting the support that you had if you were with your own parents. So in some ways, we do have examples of that. The children are in many ways very resilient, but how is this going to affect them? And I think about, like, now, we don't have as many large families, at least in the United States, as I don't know about India, but
Same in India, Michelle. Same.
What's that? Same. So when I was growing up, I was in a member, there were 6 children in my family. Now you're lucky if you get a family that has 2 children. And
Absolutely.
How does that impact our society when a child grows up in an environment, in a community in which everybody's an adult? And how does that affect their ability to connect with other people their own age? And what about all this technology and how children are connecting by cell phones instead of being able to actually speak to each other? So we're in an amazing experiment all the way around.
We are.
But isn't life an experiment?
It is.
And we forget that often because we get stuck in our own bodies, but we don't look far out to see what life really is. Do we know what it is? And is the rigidity sometimes something that's needed? Like someone can say, hey, I want to talk to people in English. You make that decision, and that may be your passion, but how you go about it may be different from what you thought it was going to be in the beginning.
I'll give an example of that. I'm not quite.
Okay. For me, when I decided that I was going to do this thing in English, I thought, oh, I'd make money by doing the show. But it isn't the show that's bringing in the money. It's happening through other things that I do in order to create that feeling of oneness and connectivity with the people that I speak to every day in English. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. That does. And certainly there is some theory about that when you have a spiritual orientation, that you put the energy out there, but you may not get the money back in the way in which you expected, but it may come in other ways, especially if you're going after your passion or your true gifts, and you put that whole I got to make money aside, and you just go for what it is that you care about. That oftentimes the way in which the money comes is in a roundabout way. It's kind of like pay it forward.
Right. And isn't life more a pay forward thing more than anything else?
We're not taught that though, Carla. We're not taught that. I mean, that's kind of like on the edge. We're usually taught, or I was taught when I was growing up, that you get a job that's secure and that you can make money from, and that you just put your nose to the grindstone, and the harder you work, the more results and the more rewards you'll get, which of course isn't true, but that's what we're taught.
Yeah.
Well, go on, Bob.
Yeah, I fully agree, and the fact that we're as a human species, and I'm sure it's that way across other parts of the world versus just the United States, where we're taught, especially through culture and through family systems, that you have to do it this way, and just moving, and this is what we're supposed to do in life. But as young children, going back to that example, they're very curious, they're very expressive, and they have to learn to be rigid. Young children are very flexible, and we grow into rigidity, and we lose the ability to be creative, and only a small percentage, by the time they're adults, only about 5% are creative, because they're very rigid at that point in time. And so we have to unlearn a lot in order to become flexible again.
But what you said about being creative, we're told, hey, Carla, you're dreaming when you want to create world peace using conversation. Carla, you're crazy. You need to lose the weight to be attractive to people. We're told so many things that other people have given to us that we have lost that ability to speak openly, to be more creative in how we speak and what we do. Shivali, you've been very quiet. What are you thinking?
I'm listening very carefully to all this. Like when you're giving this example, it depends on your family, your upbringing, this mindset that we are talking about. It's what is a mindset? That means it can be reset. For me, it can be reset. You can always reset it. It's just about, getting in touch with things which you have not perceived earlier. For example, if you're growing up in a family where you are being encouraged, to speak out your mind, in that case, you do speak out. or the family doesn't encourage you, but you want to speak out. So you will look out for opportunities to grow. Maybe you will not tell it to your parents or whoever is your guardian. Like, I can talk about myself. I got the opportunity from my family. At the same time, see, we never had technology, we never had Google, we had books. Our only way of connecting to the world was books. So that way, in the family itself, there was encouragement to read books, to explore new things, not to be rigid, not to be fixed just about the Indian culture, to go beyond it. So I think that means things do change. They can change. It depends on the situation again, and also on the individual. So I always had this desire that I want to explore. I was curious by nature. Since I was curious by nature, gradually as time passed, I came in touch with the right kind of people. For example, I was introduced to the Silva Method, which is now a very ancient method. It has its origin in the Vedic times. So I got introduced to it. Then I realized that, yes, I can reset my mind. There's something called the power of the subconscious mind. What I'm trying to say is that things can change, but it's up to us. We don't have to always depend on the externals. It has to be from within.
I totally agree with you, Shivali. In fact, I was going to say something similar in that it's a balance. Responding to you, Carla, about these people who tell us, "Oh, you're crazy to try and do that. That's you can't be successful in that way." People are going to be telling us things all the time, and it's a balance between listening and being a people pleaser and giving them what they want, or listening to that inner voice inside that is also a GPS, a guidance system for us. And for me, that's spirit. That's connecting to the source. That's connecting to the all. And when I use that as a guideline, then I start to make decisions that are maybe not agreeable for everybody else. And it's scary, especially if you grew up where it was not safe to make your own choices. But as you say, Shivali, it's a matter of changing your mind, of believing that you can change your mind, because you can. But sometimes it takes practice, just like practicing developing your body in exercise. You have to develop the muscles, and the mind is a muscle as well as the rest of your body.
Yes.
And if
absolutely.
if we keep this in mind, and I don't know why this came to me, Michelle, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. When I first met you, you said I'm a perfectionist. Unless I do it perfectly, I go crazy and I need things to be perfect. And I remember saying, Michelle, you can only be your perfect you. But as a perfectionist, do you find that you are more rigid in your thinking than flexible? Is it easy for you to say, oh, I don't like how this is going. Where should I go now?
Well, you have to understand that when I say perfectionist, it's only about me. I have no expectations about other people being perfect. And so I'm extremely flexible with other people. It's only my own judgment of myself that lacks the flexibility that I require. And yes, it has been my life journey to develop that flexibility.
Now, talking about that, I want to go back to you and your perfectionism, if you don't mind. You can own anyone. We cannot make a decision for anyone else of what they need to do, or that we may tell a child, please, I want you to be a doctor. Your dad's a doctor. Be a doctor like your dad. And the kid wants to be an artist and is in conflict. But back to perfectionism, has that kept you from making some decisions to do something separate from what you thought you would be doing?
I like to think of my perfectionism as having a very high standard of performance. And sometimes I'm surprised at the level of performance other people work at because I have a very high standard of excellence. Now, the perfectionism comes in when I'm in a situation where I'm trying to do something new. I think there is a way in which, as a child, it was stressful, just like for any human animal, to be in a place of uncertainty. And doing something that you don't know how to do is a place of uncertainty, and it can be a stressful situation. And if you have parents that are judgmental when you don't succeed the first time around, that can develop that habit of perfectionism. And it takes practice to let that go. It takes practice, like simply doing something new all the time and seeing what happens and changing the mindset. But in terms of what I've done in my life, Carla, I have gone way out on the edge many, many times. It has not prevented me, because what's been more compelling is understanding what it is to be a human in these bodies. And that has been my motivation throughout.
Yeah. So, based on what you said, Michelle, in terms and mentioning the perfectionism, and I think there's a distinction between striving for excellence and the perfectionism part. So I think the absolute perfectionist, which I don't think you are, because you're challenging a lot of different things. Which I tell people, challenge your beliefs, challenge what you know in order to be able to grow. And in your case, it seems that's what you've been doing. You've been taking certain risks, which a lot of people I know that are an absolute perfectionist just don't do that, because they get stuck and everything like that. And I'm constantly challenging. And then I think the environment that Shivali you grew up in with books, I think books allow us to explore. That's the reason I think I became obsessive with books myself, and I stopped counting at 12,000 books in my personal library, because I love to read, to explore in a lot of different subjects and continue learning, but also take a lot of risks. I think striving for excellence is important. I think striving for excellence is more towards flexibility, because flexibility allows us to reach that, and versus having a rigid mindset, as a lot of people do who don't strive for excellence. They get stuck because they have the fear of making mistakes. So they stay that stuck aspect. So perfectionism. Uh, I'm going to add one last part here. I think it's a continuum on depending on context as well. I have been through the survival aspects in terms of my life or death kind of stuff. So there's things I learned that worked in order to keep me alive. So I think I'm less flexible in terms of that area versus other areas of my life. So.
Well, do you feel, Bob, and I'm going to ask everyone this, that perfectionism makes you a little on the rigid side, whereas when you let go of perfectionism and you allow it to flow, and I was just using the word, Michelle, with you because we had discussed it. Do you feel that perfectionism kind of puts you in that narrow hole? Like, I want to be the perfect dentist. I have no desire to be a dentist. My father was a dentist. We all worked in the office for 1 year, and we all went in very, very different ways after that year. So how do you see perfectionism fitting in with the flexibility within life?
Yeah, so in your case, talking about like being a dentist or something like that, that's a parent's belief system trying to infiltrate into your mind. So I think if we eliminate that and we focus on what we love to do, and I hate to use the word passion, but I think having that sense of purpose for us, then in that case, if we want to strive to be the best us in terms of what we do, and bring in the aspects of excellence towards perfectionism. So I'm going to define perfectionism in terms of that context. If we strive to be the perfect us that we can be, we'll never reach it. So we have to understand that. We'll never reach that level of perfectionism. There's nobody that can ever reach that. So we have that understanding going in. Yet if we strive to be the best version of ourselves, especially in what we do in life, then I think that works in terms of the flexibility, because we have to understand that we have to be flexible in certain areas in order to reach that level of the perfect us.
So I really like what you're talking about in terms of the perfect us, Bob. I think that's a really important thing to strive for. And I think it's like excellence. I like the word excellence rather than perfectionist. But perfectionist comes in for me when you grow up in a family where whatever you do isn't good enough, or it's not. And so there's this striving, continuous striving to get that approval. And that's where the perfectionism comes in, and the fear of being rejected. And that's what fuels that behavior. And, you hesitate to take on things that you don't know how to do because you might be judged. And so it's actually for me, I see it more as a social dynamic. I mean, where else would you get that attitude that you have to be perfect, except that you're striving for love? And it's a weird dynamic, or a weird goal, because you don't ever know what the real goal is, because it's dependent on other people who are like, it's at their whim, or, their mood or whatever. And so letting go, what you're really letting go of is not the perfectionism. What you're letting go is the need to please other people, to get their approval. And that's a hard one, because we are wired to want to fit in, to have people accept us. It has a huge impact. I mean, that's my experience. I think there are some people that are less triggered by that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. And Shivali, I want your intention, or your insight outside of our family. I think our educational systems, and I'm not sure how it is in India, our educational systems teach us this way of thinking as well. We have a grading system from A to F, and that creates that perfectionism that you have to achieve this in order to be the best in a class, and that creates a rigidity in our mindset. And I've been challenging the educational system for years, and I've talked to some now former professors, Roger Schenck being one of them, who had a whole department at Harvard and at Stanford named after him, and he says this is BS, because our educational system is not teaching us to strive for excellence. It's teaching us to strive for this grade, to reach or test and things like that. But
go on. What you think about is what it's striving to teach us is how to be cooperative with our bosses. I mean, there's a whole bunch of books out there that talk about how our educational system is not designed for us to be the best we can be, our perfect selves, but actually to fit in, to be sheeple, to be able to be put in jobs where you can do the repetitive, meaningless stuff over and over again. Why do you think that 1 out of 6 American adults are on some kind of psychiatric drug? And that doesn't account for all the rest of us who are self-medicating. There are major problems in the system that design and set us up to be a particular way, and learning to accommodate, to adapt to whatever your boss, your teacher wants, means, oh, good, you're gonna do well in the system, as opposed to the rebel or the somebody who doesn't fit in, who becomes even more rebellious because they can't fit in, because they don't have the background to fit in.
Yes, actually here I can easily relate. You know, this education system, for example, in India, we have, we've all been talking about this in India also for many years now, that the kind of education which is being provided, for example, when I was growing up, again, the question of grade, the percentage of marks, you must achieve so much, then only you're an excellent student. But down the line, say by the time my daughter went to school, things began to change, but not in all schools. For example, she till class 6 never knew the meaning of examinations. They never had the examination system. So for the first time when she appeared for an exam, she and her friends were so excited. Oh, we are going for exams. They were so happy about it. And I said, oh my God, I used to get so sick over the thought of giving an exam. And here is my daughter jumping with joy. So you see, the child never had that fear of exams, and today she's she did her psychology, and today she's a professional herself, and she says, let go of things. There is nothing fixed. She says, why are we fixing people into molds that, like as rightly pointed out, doctors child has to be a doctor, that person could be an artist, a painter, anything. So things are changing, but as far as the education system wholly is concerned, it is still stuck in that old kind of
Correct.
regimentation.
Correct.
And as a result, yes. And
you have
as
to
a
think
result,
about, oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, Michelle, it's fine. Please continue. Please continue, Michelle. Yes,
well,
Dr. Michelle.
there might be economic reasons for why, at least in the United States, we have the educational system we do, because it creates people that are tractable. It creates a competitiveness that causes people to buy things so that they are better than somebody else or as good as somebody else. There are some payoffs to it in terms of the market system of our culture. I don't say that's good, but there are payoffs and benefits, and that's why it has lasted so long.
But then there's a question that 2020, all the schools got shut down worldwide.
Yeah.
Okay, no schools, no exams. In India, the children were being promoted based on their earlier reports. So don't you think now, at least now, the people who are connected to education need to rethink that?
Absolutely.
Are those exams really important? Were they really important?
There are so many.
Something? Yes.
There's so many other things they need to do in school, like how to connect with each other, how to instead of how to compete with each other, how to cooperate with each other. Wouldn't we be much better if we were taught how to cooperate with each other? And yes, Carla.
Absolutely, I agree. But because the schools, at least in this country or in Washington, D.C., I can talk about, the standards are so important that we have forgotten to teach children human values. We have forgotten to teach children how to relate. We have forgotten how to teach children to just feel like they belong to the teacher and the teacher belongs to them. Because of this, education has fallen far away from what education was ever meant to be. And we need to put that in. I mean, I can go on and on about this topic. And it's a topic I feel very strongly
about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we want to teach them to be creative and to think outside the box. And there's a whole slew of people who don't want us to think outside the box. They want to keep you in the box.
And because of the standards, we're stuck in a box. In fact, that's one reason I had to leave the school system. I had no choice. I had a principal who thought my kids who were educably mentally retarded, the last year I taught, and reading on the first, second, and third grade, needed to read out of books for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I went out. I bought all the materials for that. Everything that was in that classroom was bought by me because they couldn't do it. And the principal was not willing to give me my freedom to teach the kids as they were. I had a kid who was afraid to multiply. Now when the last time I saw her, she was multiplying 3 digits by 2 digits. No one thought she would even go 2 times 2.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember teaching a Psych 101 class at a local community college. I did it for a year, and just to get the feel of it. And I just broke every single standard of teaching, of the way teachers taught. And so the following year they wanted to do my class. I said I only did it 1 year. This is just a test for me. But I brought on things that were more experiential in nature in terms of learning. I uh, did some Pavlovian techniques and everything like that within the class, and unknown to them. And I did a lot of other stuff. I even hypnotized the class. So they got to have a lot of different experiences of what the real world psychology is all about, because I think that was important for them to understand instead of what was in a textbook. And and when they got through, it was exciting for them. They wanted to know more about psychology in the real world.
Now let's
That's
go back
fabulous.
and that's the whole thing, the rigidity of the system and the flexibility of the teacher. And we need to come back to that topic because usually it's the rigidity of the system, of the school district, that keeps the children from learning what they need to be learning. And that is a very important point to bring up on a regular basis. How do we move the children from being so rigid? I need to pass that test and I better get a 99% grade or I'm not good enough. Look at the rigidity in a teenage kid who maybe wants to go to Harvard, but accepted somewhere else. And I'm not going. That's not where I want to go. However, for that child or that young person growing up, the other school may be better, giving that child that ability to think for themselves and not being rigid because mom and dad went to Harvard and they have to go to Harvard. My whole family went to Temple University in Philadelphia. I didn't want to go. I caused a lot of ruckus. I never did go to Temple for anything, but that's a whole different story.
Yep. Yep. I can remember a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist because her family wanted her to go to school, become a medical doctor, and become a psychiatrist. So she did it. And then in her 40s, her mid 40s, she realized she never went after her dream, and she completely quit being a psychiatrist. And her family says, you're going to a midlife crisis. And I feel that a lot of people go through midlife crisis is that they're doing it because they have um, unresolved dreams from what they really wanted to do. And then all of a sudden they're going out and they're dropping all these things. And that's what she did. She went and started studying acting. She went to acting school, and then she became an actress, and which is complete of what her family did not want her to do. But she finally realized that that was important for her. Psychiatry was not important for her.
Well, it probably gave her some background that helped her in being an actress.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Helps. Everything helps. All the experiences must have helped her. But yes, follow the heart. How many can really follow their heart, their passion, and think on a very global platform?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I still know a lot of people, including uh, friends of mine that have been stuck, and a lot of them have regrets as they're coming into their later part of their life. Uh, Now in their 70s, these are people that I knew from when I was younger that um, have completely all these regrets. I said, it's not too late. It's not too late.
Exactly.
You can do it even in your 70s. I gave examples of Grandma Moses, who became one of the most well-known folk artists of all time, and she started at 78 years old. So
Wow.
it's never too late. Or last year I read about a guy that I do want to interview who ended up getting his PhD in physics at the age of 89. So
Wow.
it's never too late
Yeah. Until you die.
until you
And
die. Exactly.
what is it? There was this book called The Five Regrets of the Dying. Do you remember that, by
Hmm.
Bronnie Ware? And the number one regret of the dying was, I wish I had lived a life true to myself. I wish I had instead of the life that other people wanted for me.
Yep.
Number one regret.
Yep.
And that's the whole point. There's so much regret in the world. And
That's true. That's true.
There's very little acceptance of who we are. Many women, oh, my hips are too big, or my face isn't like Michelle's, and Michelle has the perfect face as a model. I'm picking on you. I don't know why.
I do not have the perfect face as a model. You're crazy. But anyway, I take it. It's nice. Go on, give it to me.
But what I'm saying is, it just came out. I don't know why. Or maybe Bob's bald head. Maybe he always.
In India, they say, Carla, sorry for interrupting. In India, they say a bald man means he's a very rich man.
Like it.
My father was bald. I once asked my mom if she had ever seen him with hair. She said no.
They're supposed to be very rich and influential.
Actually, he was. I almost wish.
Well, I can either be bald or gray. I mean, that's just have to choose. I decided to be bald because people who knew me, so I was a stage hypnotist known as Bobby Spade's hypnotist, and had dark hair and a dark goatee, and I had this look and like really serious, and I would hypnotize people even in person. But I did the stage shows and everything, and people see me now, they don't even recognize me at all. So.
Well, you look more like Jean-Luc Picard from the Star Trek series. In fact, with the red shirt, you definitely look like a lookalike.
That's some compliment, huh?
And maybe he really is John Picard, but we don't know. You know, he may have been born Bob Choat. Well, John Picard is still here, so we can't say that he slipped into Bob's body.
Or I
But
could be.
he made bald acceptable, and Yul Brynner made bald acceptable. There were a lot of men that were
Correct.
Very attractive that made bald okay.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly fine with this. I love being bald. It feels a lot better, and plus I can run faster. I don't have the hair dragging me back. So.
But you do have to wear sunscreen on your head.
I have to wear sunscreen on my head.
Hat when it's sunny out.
Yeah.
The best thing is when you love yourself the way you are and accept others also the way they are. It makes the world a better place. That's it.
And
we really need to be feeling that compassion, flexibility. It's all there. Like as I said, mindset means it can be reset.
Yep.
And the whole point about compassion that you brought up, compassion in itself, we need to give it not only to the others and the plants and the cats and the dog, And my dog probably wished I was a little more compassionate today when he didn't want to do what I wanted him to do. But point at the point is, we are not compassionate to ourselves. We want to be nice to everyone, make everyone real happy. But do we ever think about what we need for ourselves? Because if our cups are not full, then our cups will be empty because we're not caring about ourselves. Bob, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, and I'm glad that you mentioned about the cups, because I think part of that is that we have too much in our cups, as you mentioned, our cups being full, especially with others, but also our cups are full where we become rigid in our thinking and we have nothing else that we can do. So one of the things that I tell a lot of my clients who are rigid, who are stuck, and especially in their belief system, is to unlearn what they know, especially with their belief system. Empty your cup in that sense, and so that you can fill up the cup, and and self-care is part of that. So you want to introduce, what is really important to be inside your cup. So you may have a beverage that's like, oh God, that's just not good for me. So I'm going to replace it with a beverage that makes me feel good, makes me feel warm. Maybe a nice herbal tea or something like that I can now drink out of and feel good about in terms of embracing who I am. So I tell people that I think all of us as helpers, we have to also tell it to ourselves as well.
And also, everyone has heard me say, I've been listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks. But in the middle of it, the thing that she always says is please, or he says, I never know if those, but I love them, is that if we don't love ourselves, we'll never attract what we want in the world. And I think it's time for us to take that love we have for others and close in and begin to love ourselves. We are at the end of the show, so we're going to go to around, and I'd like to hear what everyone has taken from this show today. We'll start ladies first. Michelle?
What have I taken from today? That rigidity is a matter of context and a matter of experience, that it is possible to shift out of rigidity when we shift out of fear. It's possible to shift out of rigidity when we expose ourselves to other ideas. That becoming flexible is a practice, and it's not a character defect. It's something that we can enrich ourselves with.
And what is the best way to enrich ourselves?
Well, I liked what Shivali said about reading. Reading is one way. Interacting with people who are different from ourselves is another way. Doing something new every day is another way. This creates that flexibility, that, agility that we need to adapt to changing times. Now, in nature handles it by just having a lot of different genomes out there so that something will surely work. But on a human level, we can actually cultivate that in our lives, to have that adaptability and agility to navigate change.
Thank you, Michelle. Shivali?
Yes, what I'm taking back from today's, our meet over here is what Bob said about unlearning all the time. And this is a continuous process. It is not going to stop someday. It's something very dynamic. And we just need to keep on exploring things, not stopping, not unlearning all the time, and be open to, to receive, as you rightly said, that, we'll be receiving only when we are open to it. This is what I feel. And I feel happy that there are others like me. Like today, when I'm hearing Michelle and all, like she was talking about perfectionism and all that we had discussed. I have been like that myself. I have not been very rigid with others, but with myself, probably because that's the way I was brought up in too much of discipline. So it's okay, that was there, but I am now an independent person, so I need to unlearn all that and be flexible, even towards myself, to have compassion for myself also.
So when you say having compassion for yourself, what are you looking for?
To be more compassionate towards myself is like, for example, I'm very hard on myself. If I don't do things in a particular way that I wanted it to turn out to be, I become a little harsh on myself. You know, I should give a pat on my back, right? It's okay, Shivali, it's okay. This is also nice. Now move forward. And I get stuck. So I shouldn't get stuck. This is what I'm trying to say. That if I appreciate whatever I have done to the best of my ability, then automatically I'm being compassionate with myself. First, love yourself, as they say. First, love yourself. To give a pat, it's very easy to give a pat on others' back, but sometimes we find it a big challenge. At least I find it a bit of a challenge when I need to pat myself. So if someone appreciates me, I sometimes wonder, oh, so that person has appreciated me. So why should that be? It should be natural to me, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, I like what Shivali mentioned earlier about children and how her own children in terms of the education. I think if we go back to our childlike selves, that inner child, as has been mentioned many, many times in the past, and embrace and have that compassion for that child, and and that's where the learning and a growth starts. So part of the unlearning is to go back to ourselves as that child, as that 4 or 5 year old child, and that way we can now start to embrace new learnings, because the world is just a wondrous place, and I had to learn to do it with myself. I also grew up in a very disciplined family. My dad was a career military, and he was very hardcore, and had to be perfect in terms of grades and everything like that, and that caused a lot of anxiety and stress in my life as a child. But once I reset and I go back to that state as a child, then I can just embrace. I go and I see something, maybe something that previously it was like, okay, I'm used to seeing that. Now I see it with a sense of wonder. I go out and I explore and I look at things as if I'm a little kid again, and I'm curious about so many things. I'm 70 years old, but I feel like I'm 4 or 5 years old, and just exploring it and just get excited all the time. And I get to meet new people, like all the beautiful women here. I mean, it's exciting. This is like, oh my gosh. So that's where I'm embracing that childlike self again, as we should with our own children, for them to be able to grow to be the best that they can be.
Okay. What do you guys think? Do you think we covered the subject well?
I think we went into a lot of interesting places.
We did.
A lot of interesting cubby holes. What do
Yes.
you say, Shivali?
Yes, like like I'm from India, and all of you are from various places. So what I can see is that underlying everything is the same. Actually, it's the same. It's the same kind of challenge. Like for example, the education system, children growing up, family, everything is same. So why do we feel these differences all the time? So thanks to such people like Carla, they are like angels who are bringing us together where we can come and actually get connected in a much better way. And there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn.
Yes. Yes, we're a human family, all of us. And despite we may live in so-called different cultures and everything, but there's so many things that we're alike, and I have to agree with that. And yes, it's an amazing feeling to have the understanding, and also it's an amazing feeling to have people's different perspectives in terms of what they grow on, so we can learn from that as well.
Yes. And here I just want to add something like I've been a student of literature, okay, world literature, classics, classical, Greek literature, etc. I've never been to these countries, but I can say very proudly I know much about these countries and probably the people who reside there. Why? Because that love is there. And it's through books this has happened. Of course, today you have the social media, you have Google, but for me, my origin treasure house is my books,
Mm.
my education.
Amen to that. I'm going to give you a high five to that. Boom.
It's very interesting. Everyone's concerned about being able to get through in these troubling times and not having the finances we would like to have. Someone sent me a message today saying, I want a job. And I said, well, that's really nice, but I can't help you. And he came back with, but I need a job and you're a nice person. And I said, well, you want to get paid. I can't do that right now. And he went on, oh, please give me a job. I'll pay for myself. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't make sense to me. But what it made me think is that we look at things in such a square box. Someone wants a job. He comes to me and says, I want a job. Sorry, I can't help you. I'm not hiring, but I'll pay myself. And I'm like, no, it can't work that way. I need to be able to pay for your services. The energy needs to be equal, or it's of no value. So we think in the box that something needs to be a certain way, but we don't give ourselves a way of looking at it very creatively and in a different manner.
Yeah.
Everyone agree? And with that, MindPlore is over time. So it is time to end the show. Hate to do it. It's been a good conversation, but it is that time. We will be back on Thursday for another MindPlore talking about rigidity and flexibility. Thanks to the people who watched today. And thank you very much, Michelle, Bob, and Shivali, for joining me today for a chance to explore our minds. Can we say goodbye wave goodbye before we go off air?
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Carla. Thank you,
Michelle.
Thank you,
Bob.